It's all different kinds of really cool stuff. Real quickly down the line, starting here next to me with Michael LaPlaca from Dayton, a little bit about yourself and how your department handles that creative collaboration and how it's come along in a relatively short amount of time, I imagine.
Sure, thank you. And Brandon, thank you again for the opportunity to be able to speak today. The first college summit that I went to was in 2009. And I remember having my Dayton polo shirt, and somebody from a Power 5 school came up to me and asked, "Oh, Dayton, are you guys Division I or Division II?" And I kind of looked at his shirt and said, "Well, you know, we beat you in men's basketball last year by 31 points. So, yeah, we're Division I, mother effer."
Wow.
So we've come a long way for sure from where we were at back in 2009 to the present day. And what's kind of cool is with this panel here, talking beforehand, we each have different experiences in terms of the timeline of how we've been able to develop brand, how we've been able to really enhance what we do from an athletic department side and from a video side. From our standpoint, Dayton's brand journey really is a 5-year journey. And it really was the genesis of conference realignment, where it forced us to really take a look and ask hard questions about where are we in the marketplace of college athletics. Where are we with our men's basketball program that if it's resourced in the top 25 with coaches' salaries, facilities, everything else, travel that checks off the box, what are we missing that we're excluded in this conference realignment puzzle? And so I think after we did that and really invested in brand, I think that's where we as a department and a men's basketball program really took off to achieve great heights.
Cool. Mark, how about you? Where do you fit in the BC tree, if you will?
Well, first off, thanks for having us, Brandon. Pleasure to meet you two fellows here. I just want to ask, how many SIDs or former SIDs are in the room?
Definitely former.
Oh, all right, I'm not on an island. Any current ones? All right. The comment this morning, I thought I was going to be fighting people off with a stick when they said, "We don't need to deal with you to talk to our coaches for a broadcast. We're going straight to the coaches." Like, oh boy, I'm in trouble here if I'm the only SID. But at Boston College, I kind of work in a couple different roles. I'm our PR rep or SID for the men's hockey program, but I also kind of handle a lot of our creative work from a branding and digital standpoint. And I think it's kind of the way that area of collegiate athletics really has to shift. I won't bore you with all the details of how I think the SID role is changing, but Emery over there, you remember when we were at Northeastern together? And yeah, we had 10-hour meetings about what pictures of Boston we'd use on the site of goinu.com. Yeah, those aren't conversations we're having anymore. It's pretty funny. I was talking to these guys about how I look at posting stories to a website as like number 11 on the docket of what things I have to get done. And I look at it as best of both worlds. Being involved in both sides can be a lot of work. It's what helps me get up in the morning to put it that way. But it's been great doing that and just trying to grind away and stay, kind of stay relevant, at least in the ACC and the rest of the national landscape.
Simit, how about you? You guys went under Wit a pretty, I don't want to say rebrand, but you helped clean up the style book, I guess, is a good way to put it.
Right, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having this conference right down the street from Georgia Tech. It's very convenient.
We do it just for you.
I was able to go to work this morning, so I appreciate that. We're in a unique position. Our athletic director, Todd Stansberry, really believes and has made branding a central part of his mission at Georgia Tech and at the schools that he's been previously. So about a year ago, he created a ideation and branding team at Georgia Tech. And so the fact that we're our own department really helps us get our message out, and it gives a central point for everybody else in our department to look to someone to get answers. Because I think that's what happens in a lot of places when you don't know who's the right person to go with. There ends up being a lot of different messages and initiatives going on that are maybe simultaneous or overlapping. So that's been great for us, is that we've been able to centralize a lot of what we do at Georgia Tech, and we're like I said, the team is about a year and a half old, and we just started rolling out a new branding initiative that really is coinciding with our transition to Adidas this summer and the launch of our this upcoming fall season.
All right, so I'm interested to dig a little bit more into that team with you, and that I'd like to hear from you guys. How are you doing similar things at your university, or how might you want to see things progress at university, and how this goes? So who has a seat at that table, Simit? And a lot of this conference so far, we've been talking about control rooms and live event streaming. This seems to be a different bucket of content, where you might be driving traffic to that live event, but you're creating static graphics, moving images, things like that. So who's got a seat at that table in that group? Is it social? Is it marketing, etc.? Who's a part of those conversations, and are you talking content? What are you doing?
Right, all of the above.
Okay.
Really what it comes down to is content, is creating the right content for the right audience. We work a lot with our marketing staff. Obviously, they're more involved in the sales and in-game aspect. Also, they were the ones doing a lot of the targeting with our emails. And so we're trying to create the right collateral for them. We're also working closely with the video folks. Obviously, my colleague Andy Blanton was on a panel earlier today talking about ACC Network, and that's certainly a big part of what we're trying to get involved in, as well as to figure out what's the right content that's going out to a larger audience than we normally have. And the other part is really the teams. I think everybody would probably say that at the end of the day, almost everything we do comes down to recruiting. What are we doing to recruit student athletes, recruit students, recruit fans? Everything has an element of recruiting in it. So just having a consistent message in everything that we create, a brand, style, look, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, it has to attract new people. And hopefully it resonates with the people you already have. But I feel like the way that we've done it at Georgia Tech has been great. We're still, it's not perfect. We're still going through growing pains, but we've been able to take our marketing staff, communication, video production, and kind of bring everybody together in one place, along with the folks that are working on each of the sports.
Sure. Now, Mark, just getting to know you over the last couple of weeks, I know this is something you're very passionate about. How is it playing out in BC, and how would you like to see it perhaps be playing out differently? And is this something that you think, if it could, in a perfect kumbaya world, could happen in every athletic department? How would you like to see this kind of play out? Is Simit's model a good one?
You are really putting me on the spot.
We're live streaming too, by the way, so I'm sure your boss is watching.
I think what Simit's talking about in my talks with Michael as well are definitely the right direction. I think there's a bit of a misnomer at the Power 5 level that every single department does have a creative staff. Mm-hmm. That is obviously the trend that it is going, and it's someone that kind of has a shoe on each foot in both those things. I definitely think you're going to start seeing communications, PR, SAD types report into the creative side. Posting a game recap on a website, a losing one. I was saying, what's the point of putting up you have to report on it, but why are we spending 35 minutes doing a Boston College loss to Notre Dame 3-0 in volleyball? You're almost doing the opposite of, promoting your teams and your brand. I think that we had discussions earlier this week about you have to get away from the campaign side of things, which is what you talked about, and really focus in on the brand. And that's where I think communications, who does have their feet to the ground with their coaches, the sport administrators, the student athletes, can really feel the pulse of how they want that message portrayed, and can work with people, like everyone up here, to get that message, get that brand, get that feel out there on your digital channels. And I think that's really what has to be the forefront. I mean, as he mentioned before, I think that SEDs now so more than ever, we are recruiters. Anyone can go find what the score is, and however many levels. And I think it's an interesting time, because I think a lot of communication staffs are trying to pivot to that model. They just don't quite know exactly what direction to go, and it's definitely an interesting time. And we're doing our best, like I said, at BC. Obviously, could use more bodies, probably just like everybody else in this room. Mm-hmm. But I think the methods and models that he's discussing is definitely what we're trying to get to, for sure.
Cool. And Michael, that's evolved a lot for you, it seems like, over the last few years
No
as well.
question about it. And at the high major level, too, we certainly work as an external relations group really well with our graphics team, marketing, corporate. And for us, with our strategic focus, especially with men's basketball, since it's the majority of our paycheck, what we try to do is make sure that everything that we touch, especially on the video side with live event production, is to make sure that it's streamlined within our strategy, to make sure that all those touch points, whether it's corporate, whether it's the lineups, the post game, everything fits with what we want to be able to promote. And our strategy over the past 4 or 5 years, especially with men's basketball, is to really drive home atmosphere. We believe that having the best game day atmosphere and turning University of Dayton Arena into a madhouse gives us the best chance to win, to recruit, to have that national exposure, to have as many national television events as we have, and really drive that fan base into a positive feeling with our brand. That's our strategy on that front, where everything that we touch goes through that prism, and we do everything in-house as well. So we're very proud that we're able to control that look and feel, control that content, and be able to make changes if we need to based off of circumstances.
Sure. Now, this being the 10th edition of this show, we've seen a lot of things change over that decade, numerous things. You could go down a list of major shifts that have happened that has changed athletics, video, all that kind of stuff. But one of the big philosophical things that seems to have changed, at least in the 7 years that I've been doing this, is that when I started working on this event, it was, we were producing live video to make alumni happy, to drive donations, maybe it's for the parents, and a lot of those things are still true, but there seems to have been a pretty hard shift in the last couple of years of make our social platforms speak to a younger generation and make them cool to recruits. Like you said, Mark, you're recruiters now. As an SID, you're less worried about who the local beat reporter might be, and you're more worried about who's that 16, 17-year-old. I imagine you've seen that all across the board, and how has that changed your mindset and the types of content you create, be it static or moving?
This is only 45 minutes, this panel? I don't know.
I'll jump in here. I think the one thing that we look at is that when we look at our season ticket holder base, it's probably like a lot of other schools, it's going to be a little bit older, it's going to skew male. Is it the content you create, if you're creating content for those people, that's probably not something that will resonate with recruits. If you're creating content for recruits and students, that probably will resonate with an older crowd in a lot of cases too. Or if it doesn't, I think that they'll at least understand what you're trying to do. I think that from a resource standpoint, it's hard to be everything to everybody. But that's, I think, something that when you look at some of the recruiting stuff and, whether it's graphics or highlights or some of the animation stuff, a lot of the great cut stuff that goes on around the country, if a kid sees it, a recruit sees it and it's cool, hopefully your fan base sees it and thinks it's cool too.
I don't even know what direction I'm going to go in, because when we start talking about these things, they get all excited, and I don't even know what tangent I'm going to go into. The hard part for, I think, communication staffs is that for those, how many college hockey fans we have in here? In Atlanta? Wow, that's pretty good. All right, good deal. Coach of Boston College, for those that may not know, I call him the Coach K of college hockey. He's the winningest coach of all time. Just a legend in his own right, Jerry York. And he's going to be 73 years old in a few weeks. And he's like, did you see? I could do his voice right now, but my Boston accent isn't very good, so I'll spare you guys that. But he goes, did you see the article in the Globe this morning? I was like, nope, I didn't. And you can't just ignore that demographic. There's people out there I know that want longer press releases because that demographic, they enjoy reading those things. But from where we're at, that's just not the marketplace I'm looking at. We, especially for folks like us that are in a professional sports town, if Tom Brady stubs his toe, good luck. We don't get any coverage on anything. So I hate the Patriots. Sorry to all the
That's very refreshing. Thank you. You're welcome here anytime.
I'm a Bills fan. But, we have to, if you're talking the mainstream media, we have to really fight. if there's not a really good success story or something unique, we're probably not going to get too much coverage. So we have to think, how can we make ourselves attractive to, number one, recruits, but also keep touch with your alums and potential supporters. I mean, like you mentioned too, we now have more of a hand in winning than probably ever before. Like you mentioned, is a great point you said. I think that people on our level now have such a like touch points with so many people that be like, I want to be part of that. At Boston College, we really want to stress the successes of our student athletes. We have incredible men and women that come through. I mean, smart as whips, but athletic as well, and we love to promote that. And I think by doing that, you reach a clientele or demographic that's like, I want to be that person that looks like that on whatever medium it might be. And yeah, there's a lot of tangents. I said I hate the Patriots, but yeah, I could keep going. I'll talk to you guys after, but let's just speak.
Well, going back to the original topic, though, of defining your brand, I think as long as you're creating content that fits your brand and fits your strategic vision, I think you're going to get a lot of success, whether it's with recruiting or to, you know, different demographics that you're trying to appeal to. One of the things that we've kind of figured out, and I think it's been very helpful in terms of the way that we operate, is the stuff that we're creating at Dayton might not work for the stuff that you're creating at Georgia Tech or at Boston College or school XYZ. Because it doesn't fit with what messages, what we're trying to showcase as part of our brand, as part of our look and feel, as part of the story of what we are trying to tell to prospective students. So I would say, as you're going through this process or looking at a rebrand, think of what best fits your school or, you know, your audience, and then kind of work from there, and then get the pieces of the puzzle that you need in order to make that successful. So, I mean, a perfect example is one thing we did was we forged a deal with APM Music, and we utilized their professional library for a lot of different recruiting pieces in arena, for television, and that has helped with that brand, that look and feel, to where our audience feels when they hear that song and it goes with the specific video clips that we put to that music, it just gives that positive feeling.
Can I just jump in real quick? Because you said something I think is really important that everyone needs to kind of understand. Boston College is not Dayton. Dayton is not Georgia Tech. Boston College is not any of you institutions out there, and vice versa. And the SID model way back when was everybody, you can relate to me, hey, what did so-and-so's game notes look like? Let's copy their template. Well, now that's what's happening across the board. And we're now at like this evolved stage of copycatism, whatever you want to call it. And it's just this pile of mush in the digital ether. And you really have to hone in on the things that differentiate your institution, whether, you know, it's successes in athletics, you know, whatever it might be. And it's really important to not be like, hey, do you see what Texas did? That's so cool, we need to do that. No, you don't. You're not Texas. So yeah, maybe something they did in a special effect or something looks cool, but they're telling their story and we're telling ours. And it's really important to yeah, you want to see what everyone else is doing, but we got to get out of, break the mold of trying to emulate and copy one another, if that makes sense.
I'll add that. I think the authenticity aspect of it is very important. I think your fans can usually spot when you're just copying what somebody else did. I think all of us have probably walked into a meeting in the morning and someone said, did you just see what Clemson did? And, you know, that's the reality we live in. And sometimes you have to say, well, that's great. That fits what their brand is, but we have to stick to what our brand is. I had a moment there when Michael was kind of telling his brand story about creating the best atmosphere and everything. I could tell he's probably said that a million times. I think that's the great thing, is that when you do have a strong brand and you have a strong message, is that you can, one, articulate it, and two, it gives you a starting point for everything that you do. When you do come up with an idea, it's, you know where to start because you know what your brand is and what you're trying to do that. And Mark kind of mentioned the word differentiator. That's where we started with our branding, is to say, you know what, if we talked about some of the things that Georgia Tech and athletics is about, it'd be the probably 90% of them would be the same thing that everybody would say about their school, right? But we have to pick what makes Georgia Tech different, or what makes your school different than every other school out there, and really accentuate those things. So I think that's really important when you look at the branding. And most importantly for us, when you're talking about content creators, is that sometimes it stops an idea or something in its tracks before it gets started because it's off-brand. And I think that's what's all, like, you know, when I look back at what we were doing 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was all over the place because we had no starting point. We had no brand. And I think that's the pitfall you have, but that's the great safety net you have when you have a good brand and everybody in your department and your organization knows it.
Now, I think the best way to articulate that brand is, let's look at some content now. Let's look at some cool stuff. We'll kind of go through each of you down the line, some of the cool things that you've done for either social, your website, whatever it may be. Michael, we'll start with you. You had some slides, and then we'll get to a video after those. But here, what are some of the highlights that you had from this year?
Well, kind of showcasing that 5-year journey of igniting our brand, and, oh, that's wrong school.
What's wrong with that school?
Nothing, just...
Sorry, I think I might have gone out of order there too. But you're going to kind of show us a little bit of a before and after. Would you say
yes,
that's kind of where we're going to go?
Absolutely, because what I want to be able to show is the impact of brand. And when you invest what you want to be successful in, you're going to see results. So igniting our brand, kind of telling our story. First slide is just kind of the turning point of, you know, where we were at before in 2012 and previous. You see that wonderful 1990s cartoonish logo where we actually spell out our entire name in the logo. Really, really just kind of cartoonish and not very good. And because of where we were funding everything in terms of our men's basketball program and our other sport programs as well, we had to really ask hard questions about, you know, what are we missing? Where are these gaps that are forcing us to really have these difficult conversations? And so that was kind of the turning point, was conference realignment, and then saying, okay, we need to elevate our game. We need to elevate our look and feel, our brand, and really showcase, you know, exactly who we are. I think you go to the next slide. One thing that's kind of helpful is defining brand, because there's a lot of different components when you really get into it, of brand acceptance, you know, the launching of a brand, and really it's just the perceived image and that emotional response to your school, company, the services that's provided. So that was kind of our jumping point in terms of, all right, how are we going to retool our brand? So the next slide is just kind of the step points of how we invested in our brand. New logo, so we changed our logo, fonts, color schemes to get rid of that early 90s look. One thing we invested heavily in was television, making sure that we had every Dayton men's basketball game televised, either nationally or on RSN. In 2012-13, we had 18 games total with men's basketball games televised. After that, in the past 5 years, it's been all but one. And the one that we didn't have televised was out of our control, was the opposing school. So that television exposure is absolutely huge in terms of promoting ourselves on a national level. And then refined our social media strategy as well. Our buckets are revenue, reach, and recruiting. If it doesn't fall into any one of those buckets, we don't touch it. And because we've been able to do that, that's really streamlined the content and really helped tell our story and invest in that brand. And then, as I mentioned before, that game day atmosphere at UD Arena, we've hit record highs in terms of attendance, revenue, and really amplified the fan experience. So one of the big pieces was the logo, and we'll be over to the next slide here. You see the different applications of it. It's the same logo, but we are able to use different color schemes to have that flexibility and be able to tell our story and really make it more of a refined look about speed and aggression and passion versus what we were before. And then as you go to the next slide, you see it in applications. One of the things that we're really proud of at Dayton is our merchandise sales have doubled in that 5-year span with this look, because it's easier to put on a flag or a hat versus the cartoonish Dayton Flyers logo. So the look and feel definitely matters. I mean, it certainly matters in terms of application of all the different touch points that drive your school. One cool thing, if you go to the next slide, is the game day atmosphere. And I think we really have something special at Dayton with just the passion of the fan base. We've had 3 of the top seasons in terms of attendance, a 90% home winning percentage in the last 5 years, and it's also helped with recruiting, getting some elite prospects. And all those things just continue to add up and add up and add up. And for us in video, that's kind of the fun and the challenge of it as well, because one of the cool things is that we are controlling all the content. We do everything in-house. So if we need to make adjustments with certain things, we can do that on the fly and help drive that atmosphere. It's that important to us. You go to the next slide, the brand or television. It's just remarkable to see how important television is, and to be able to work with our RSNs and national networks. One story, this is probably my favorite story concerning television, and I'll credit my video team on this. It was a game between VCU and St. Louis that was on CBS Sports Network, and these 2 teams were at the top of the A-10, so it was the A-10 game of the night. And in the pregame show, CBS Sports Network ran a feature about Dayton's student section, the Red Scare. We had no business whatsoever being in that pregame show showcasing VCU and St. Louis. But our brand, our content was so good that they aired that and helped tell our story on a national level. So then we sent out, out to everybody, all of our donors and everything, and everyone was just jacked up about that. So it was a really cool experience to have, to show our coaches, hey, Dayton, basketball is on the pregame show of 2 teams that, just in our conference. So it was really just kind of cool to see some of those things that we've done in the past 5 years to really help tell that story. You go to the next slide. Brand acceptance and rewards. As I mentioned before, record attendance with basketball. Tickets, merchandise, donations, everything is up by 35%. As an athletic department as a whole, we've had the most conference championships in a 5-year period. So not just with enhanced men's basketball atmosphere and look and feel, but it's also helped our other sport programs as well, where women's basketball is in the NCAA tournament every single year, volleyball the same way, baseball going to the NCAA tournament for the first time, cross country winning conference championships for the first time. So that cumulative effect of telling your story certainly can have a lot of different touch points to help your athletic department overall. And then I believe we have a video as well, just a quick 1-minute video just kind of showcasing that 5-year success and that focus on brand and what we've been able to achieve.
With Flyers fans, creating one of the nation's best home court advantages. Nothing compares to the 6-man at UD Arena. It is a nightmare to play this building for the visitors.
So just there, hopefully you're excited about Dayton basketball there in just in that minute span. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean that's what we've been driving for the past 5 years, and we're very proud of that. But that's our story.
Cool, congratulations, very well done.
Thank you.
Mark, what do you got for us?
Man, you just covered a lot. All right. What I'm going to talk about, I'm going to try and buzz through this because I know we're probably a little crunched for time, but the focus on what I'm going to talk about is a little bit more social driven, just because that's kind of, that's just where I'm focusing on certain things, mainly for our external components, whether it's communications, marketing, even development a little bit. And if you just go to the first slide here, this is just kind of your boring cookie cutter stuff that we talked about, logo usage, correct backgrounds, hex codes, fonts, things of that nature. And I won't get too crazy into it. If you go to the next slide. So I could go on forever here. Now, this is, I was kind of tasked with putting together collateral for pretty much the usage of almost everyone else in our department. And the difficult part for me was trying to maintain something that I thought was aesthetically pleasing, that was consistent, but also had to be manipulated by other staff members that may not be as versed in Creative Cloud, a lot of Adobe applications. So it was difficult and posed a lot of limitations. A lot of these images you see here are smart objects. I've said that cutouts and things can bog things down, and I tried to get away from that for people that it just might create too much work for. What I noticed, what became hard though, is when there's too many cooks in the kitchen. I compare a lot of these templates, and I hate that word, but it's necessary evil. It's almost like a game of telephone, where like usually telephones, it can end up, who knows what direction telephone might end up. Like these templates towards the end of the 17-18 season looked like someone just took everything and swirled them around. I was like, how did that get there? Where's that certain whatever? And one interesting thing, I'd actually like to hear your guys' thoughts on this, and I don't want to spend too much time, but I could talk about it forever. For those that are, enjoy looking at all the digital collateral and design and this and that, what's the trend you're noticing out there with logos? It's all becoming like a monochromatic, like a one color monochromatic look. So if we're playing Tulane, I don't think we've ever played Tulane, so I'll use Tulane's example. I'm not going to put a green wave, like putting a green wave logo up there is just going to throw everything off. From a color palette has become so important from a visual standpoint in brand. And so the bottom right, don't take pictures. That's for next year. No one's seen this yet, so that's just for ours only, all right? These other three things, though, I'm going to try. A logo is what embodies an athletics department. Why? I want to stop giving real estate to our opponent and competitors on our digital channels. I don't want a Vermont logo up there. I don't want a, what do we got, Pitt logo. I don't need that anymore. I think that we also had been given orders from way up the university side to stop using opponent logos, because now we're all entrenched in athletics. We know we could probably, all of us get probably 98% on a logo quiz, at least I would think so. I think a lot of us lose sight that not everybody does know those things, and maybe at like a mid-major level, if you're playing some teams you just don't know, I think it can get muddled down. I really want to try and I want to see how it works. I'm not saying get rid of other logos completely, but I want to drive home my brand. I don't want to give them any real estate, and it's kind of we'll see how it plays out. But a lot of these things are kind of necessary evils in your communications plan. I think the biggest thing that I want to hone in on is SIDs are always complaining, I don't have time to do graphics, I don't have time to do this, that, and the other thing. Well, that's fine. We have to be smarter about what we're putting out there. What return are you going to get on your thing? What happens? Here's what I hear all the time. I spent 90 minutes on so-and-so, and what happens? Just scroll right by it. People don't even notice it, okay? When you kind of throw a bunch of crap against the wall and just muddle down your feeds, graphics are important. We become visual people, of course. That's what social has trained us to do. But I think we need to start picking and choosing our spots a little bit more. If you go to the next slide, I try and adhere these to the brand standards I put out. Well, their color palette, fonts, this and that. But these are more of one-off things that I think are important. If we're middle of crossover season, football, basketball, and our field hockey or volleyball coach, nothing against those sports, but like, hey, I want a graphic about our new GA we just hired. A photo with correct color treatment and maybe like just like one of the tags I showed in that first slide should do the trick. I don't think you need to invest that much time on something that's crazy, and I think we need to start training. I know every coach thinks their program is the most important, but we have to be smarter about our return on investment. The things that I think they accomplish here is we're showcasing our student athletes, which is what we're trying to do. An attacker of the year, our defensive end went very high in the second round. Jerome went for 46 Notre Dame. These are things that I think you're going to get a little bit more play on. It's going to catch the eye of your consumer, and I think that it's, like I said, these are things pretty much designed for our digital spaces, and I think can be used in several platforms. I like to do vertical because we don't have the staff numbers that other folks do, and we can put these in Instagram stories, we can put these in other places. So those are just a couple things. Now I wanted to show, I'll get to the videos after, I think it's probably hard to get jumbled. If you go to one, I think I have one final slide. So this is kind of a brand within a brand. Does anybody know the story of Wells Crowther? A little bit. For those that don't know, an incredible story, the 9/11 attacks. He played for the lacrosse team when we had a men's team at BC, and died in a heroic fashion. He continued to save people as he did, and died doing so. And our women's, and he's known as the man in the red bandana. If you have time, 11 minutes, Google the documentary on it. It's amazing. Our women's team, very successful, has kind of embodied that, and has kind of allowed me to really tell a story of how proud they are of Wells. Our football team has adopted it as well. When we have our one big game on Friday night, we kind of deck out our uniforms in bandana patterns, and personally I think designing with bandana patterns is pretty cool. So we've had these things. We're trying to get people to come to our quarterfinal NCAA game, undefeated season. Nobody saw the top right one because we sadly lost the national championship, so I'm showing it off to you guys. But that's kind of it for the slides. There's a couple of quick videos, and I'll try and buzz these really, really quick. Simit's video is awesome. I want to see it again. So a lot of these things I put together are kind of motion graphics, this and that. So this is our battle. We don't like BU. This is the Battle of ComAv. What I did for our pregame thing was try and just capture a little bit of the story in a different sense. This is us playing Harvard, get on the green line, jump on, blah, 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 beat Harvard, this and that. Okay, can you stop real quick if possible? Okay, or not.
Yeah, I don't think we're able to stop.
Okay. We'll let these play through, and I'll talk about them. This is our trip to Vegas, but I'll get to that in a sec. So those things you saw before were fun to do and kind of kitschy things that our fans could expect, but I saw that it was kind of taken away from our brand a little bit. It didn't really adhere to things, and I wanted to try and get back to basics here. A lot of these things that I'm showcasing now are more of our look and feel and what people, what people come to expect from us. But a lot of these things, they put like a standard press release about kick times. Why not get our fans excited, get the student athletes excited, and things of that nature. We got the cup going on. We had 18 winners. We're guaranteed to have one this year, which will tie us with Wisconsin for 19 for the most all time. So we're really pumping this up. I think that's it. Cool. I could go on forever about those slides and talk later about them. Yeah.
Cool.
Simit, yeah.
All right, and Simit, we will wrap with you.
All right, I'm going to tee up our video just to give you a little background. I mentioned our athletic director came here about a year and a half ago, and as most athletics directors do, they do a little bit of listening tour when they start, and one of the things that our fans had always complained about is gold. Mark can probably relate to gold's a tough
worst color.
One of the most coveted metals in the world, a conduit for energy, a standard for excellence. More than 125 years ago, 11 students at Georgia Tech chose gold to represent us. It became more than just our color. It reflects one of the richest histories and some of the grandest traditions in sports. And now, we write the next chapter of our great story. Inspired from our past, a sharp, bold mark that both celebrates our history and points us to the future. A thorn on our uniforms, on our fields, and on our courts. A symbol of who we are. Our tradition defines us, and tomorrow is ours for the taking. This is Georgia Tech.
That'll get you jacked up.
Thanks. What I was saying is that we, as part of our brand and rollout, one of the first things we really wanted to do is define our gold, and then we also rolled out a new word mark at that point as well. So that was our way. Also, we, when we go back to our brand, a lot of it is about our school and an academic institution, engineering based. So we tried to incorporate a lot of those elements. We used some of the resources on campus. You saw some of this laser printing and cutting as well. So it was very well received. That was something that had that, get you fired up if you're a fan. If you're not, it makes you take notice. So it was a really good effort for us. Our Chris Dawson, who's here right now, was primarily responsible for that. So
cool.
Nice work.
All right. Well, I wish we could continue to talk with you, gentlemen, but we are up against the clock here. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to any questions. If any of you have any questions, I'm sure these gentlemen will be happy to talk to you during the reception after the awards tonight. So, guys, thank you very much. Really appreciate the time.